Karen vandalized my cruiser not knowing. It was the traffic chief's official vehicle. You can tell a lot about a person by how they treat a parked car. In my case, my car wasn't just parked, it was targeted. And I wasn't just anyone. I'm Jermaine Carter, Chief of the City Traffic Enforcement Division for Metro County, and for the past 6 years, I've fought to fix a traffic system that forgot people like me even existed. I moved to the Fairwinds subdivision for peace, not because it was fancy or quiet or filled with HOA lawn trophies, but because my mother, a retired school teacher, needed care, and I wanted her to live somewhere with sidewalks wide enough for her walker. I bought the house under her name to avoid headlines, kept my rank quiet, and settled in the corner lot by Sycamore and Park Lane. Karen Dorsey ruined that peace. She moved in 2 months after I did. Short blonde bob, loud voice, a clipboard fused to her hand like an extension of her ego. Within a week, she'd self-declared herself interim president of the Fairwinds Civic Order, which didn't actually exist under the county registrar. She handed out fake newsletters, threatened fines, and demanded everyone register their vehicles through her local ordinance platform. Most people laughed, but some were scared, especially the elderly and immigrants on the block. She went after them, first harassing a retired Vietnamese vet for his flowerbed design, scolding a black family for having 2 cars on the street overnight, even reporting a deaf couple's delivery ramp as an unauthorized structure. Then she saw my cruiser. I keep my city car parked at home, sometimes clean, clearly marked, fitted with the same plate since I became Traffic Chief, Chief 1. She didn't recognize the seal or the plate, or maybe she did and thought it fake. Either way, she snapped a photo, left a paper violation notice on my windshield that read, in all caps, unregistered vehicle in violation of HOA Code 7B, remove or face penalties. I crumpled it up and didn't think twice. Mistakes happen. The next morning, my cruiser had tire marks on the driver's side. Someone had keyed the paint across the passenger door with "Move It," and the fake HOA flyer had been taped back to my window with dried glue. That's when I checked my doorbell cam and saw Karen. She wasn't subtle. In a fake HOA enforcement vest, she strutted across my driveway at 5:03 a.m. with a red sticker gun in hand like she was slapping eviction notices on bank fraudsters. Her little dog peed on my walkway while she muttered, "Unbelievable. Thinks he's above the rules." I didn't react. Not yet, because I wanted to see how far she'd go. The answer came 48 hours later. A knock at my door, real cop uniform, county patrol. "Mr. Carter," he asked, confused. "We got a complaint. Said you had a vehicle impersonating city service." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He gestured toward my cruiser. "She said it was a private citizen faking a government plate." Karen stood across the street, smiling, filming. The officer wasn't rude, just doing his job. But as he walked up to my vehicle and leaned in, his eyes stopped on the license plate, then the dashboard, then the official fleet decal only issued by my department. He stepped back, jaw slightly open. I raised my badge slowly. "Want me to get my commissioner on speaker?" He turned to Karen. She turned pale. The silence after the officer saw my badge was deafening. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if the universe was holding its breath. I could feel Karen's eyes still burning from across the street, but her smug posture had shifted ever so slightly, 1 foot back, one hand slipping the phone into her yoga jacket. Officer Hines, the patrolman she'd called, coughed awkwardly. "Chief Carter, I didn't know you're good." "Officer," I said, "you followed up. That's what matters." He looked relieved, but confused too. She told dispatch someone was impersonating city law enforcement. She also filed a phony HOA citation on a county property and keyed a department-issued vehicle, I said plainly. He turned back toward Karen, who had started inching away from the sidewalk like the scene was over. It wasn't. I stepped across the street. "Ms. Dorsey, I called." She turned. Yes, her voice rose in a chirpy tone, but there was no joy in it, just performance. "You filed a false police report. Do you know how serious that is? I filed a community safety concern, she snapped back. That vehicle is intimidating. Nobody told us it was allowed to park here. I'm the chief of traffic enforcement for the entire county. I said, voice level but cutting. That vehicle's authorized by 3 departments in the mayor's office. And I own this property. Karen crossed her arms and defiant. You're not technically under the HOA. That's correct, because Fairwinds doesn't have a real HOA. That's when everything began to unravel. Karen had spent the last 4 months building an illusion, a fake homeowners association that had no legal standing, issuing fines that didn't exist, threatening people with citations that had no backing. It wasn't until she went after me that someone with actual authority called her bluff. But it wasn't enough to just scare her. I filed a formal complaint with the County Ethics Review Board that same afternoon. I also submitted footage of her defacing a city vehicle, trespassing, and impersonating municipal code enforcement. Officer Hines added a report for misuse of emergency resources. Word spread fast. By Monday, local news ran a segment titled Fake HOA or Community Terror. They'd interviewed Mrs. Santiago, an elderly widow down the street who'd paid Karen $250 in fake lawn compliance fees after she threatened to have her home reported to code enforcement. Karen's story changed twice in that interview. First, she claimed she was volunteering as a civic leader. Then, when pushed, she said she was in talks to formalize the HOA structure, but there were no filings with the county, no board, no vote, just her. And then came the parking permit audit. I'd ordered it quietly from the inside. Within 48 hours, we discovered she had filed over 37 anonymous traffic complaints against neighbors in the Fairwinds area, mostly Black, Latino, or immigrant families. She even tried to get the Nguyen family's handicap placard revoked, and the city was listening until they realized none of the complaints aligned with law. That Wednesday, I met with the mayor. We're prepared to release a statement, he said, but I'd rather you speak at the town hall next Friday. This neighborhood's become a powder keg. He wasn't wrong. By Thursday, your protests had started outside her home. Nothing violent, just neighbors holding signs, reading fake fines. Real harm. We are not your tenants. Stop the harassment. Karen went full bunker mode, closed her curtains, had pizza delivered through a gate, filed a restraining order against me. It was denied the next morning by a judge who also happened to be my cousin. The twist Karen's campaign wasn't just about power. It was about real estate. She'd been collecting data who had code violations, overdue property taxes, unregistered sheds, and using that information to pressure people into selling or compliance renovations through a contractor friend. A friend who happened to be her brother. By the time we raided her home with a warrant granted thanks to testimony from 5 residents and forensic evidence from her phony mailers, we found dozens of files, photos, license plates, fake violation templates. She even had a printed template titled Nuisance Letter for people who don't belong here. Her brother was arrested for fraud. She was detained for impersonating a municipal officer, harassment, and cyber trespassing. But the story wasn't over. Because when the town hall came, something shifted in the community. Friday night came like thunder on the horizon. The community center, usually quiet save for dance recitals or bake sales, was packed wall to wall with over 200 residents, some standing in the aisles, others watching through the glass from the front patio. Word had spread across Fairwinds and beyond. The mayor was in attendance. So was the city attorney, 2 council members, 3 local news stations, and even a representative from the state's Civil Rights Commission. And me, I stood behind the podium with my badge glinting under the overhead light, heart pounding not from nerves, but from resolve, because tonight wasn't about me. It was about everyone Karen had steamrolled, shamed, and silenced. Good evening, I began. My voice echoed loud and calm. My name is Jermaine Carter. I'm the Chief of Traffic Enforcement for Metro County, but I'm also a neighbor, and I've lived in Fairwinds for 15 months. A few murmurs, people nodding. I bought a house here because my mother, who's now 84 and recovering from surgery, needed safety and stability. Instead, We got surveillance flyers taped to our mailbox, anonymous fines, and eventually a fake cop called on my vehicle, which happens to be city property. I paused. Across the room, Karen sat beside her lawyer, arms crossed, eyes shooting daggers. But she didn't interrupt. Not yet. The person responsible, I continued, claimed to represent a homeowners association, but as you'll soon see in the documents we've submitted, there is no registered HOA here in Fairwinds. There is no board, no ratified charter, no legal power. Gasps. The crowd shifted. I held up a thick file. What we do have are 42 police reports filed by residents over the last year, most of which involve a single person harassing homeowners under false authority, targeting families of color, immigrants, retirees, and people who she deemed out of compliance with her rules. The screen behind me lit up with images, scans of Karen's phony violation notices, emails from her fake compliance office alias, and video stills from security cameras catching her vandalizing cars and porches at night. Then came the financials. Our investigation revealed a deeper motive: property acquisition. The perpetrator was threatening residents with fake violations and then recommending they either sell before fines escalate or accept help from a preferred contractor who, we later discovered, is her brother. The air turned electric. The city attorney stood up. "I've already filed motions for restitution and formal charges," she said to the crowd. "And we are opening a fraud and hate crime investigation based on patterns targeting protected communities." Then I dropped the hammer. "And just to clarify," I said, turning back to the audience, "her final complaint to police that I was impersonating law enforcement, it failed because the officer she called knew who I was, and if she had bothered to verify, she would have known too." I paused, turned slightly toward her table. "Karen Dorsey, the next time you see a car you don't like in this neighborhood, I suggest you knock on the door like a human being, because you never know who you're targeting." A beat of silence, then applause, a thunderclap of claps, shouts, standing cheers. The noise filled the hall like a dam bursting. Cameras flashed. Karen stood up, said something to her attorney, and stormed out, red-faced and furious. But it was too late, because the community saw everything. The aftermath unfolded quickly. Within a week, Karen had been formally charged with impersonating a public official, filing false police reports, harassment, and mail fraud. Her brother was charged with contractor fraud and conspiracy. Their shared bank accounts were frozen. More importantly, victims of her fake violations came forward, some who had paid her hundreds of dollars, others who had nearly lost their homes due to threats of foreclosure. And the city responded. The mayor launched a Fairwinds Community Oversight Committee, independent, multiracial, and legally recognized. I was asked to serve as honorary advisor, alongside Mrs. Santiago. The widow Karen had once tried to fine for her rose garden. We held workshops, legal aid clinics, rewrote the neighborhood covenant with input from actual residents. We created something real. For a brief moment, after the town hall exploded into applause and the warrants dropped like bricks, I thought it was over. I was wrong. The storm didn't end with Karen's arrest, it widened. A week after her charges were filed, I got a call from the state auditor's office. Not about Karen, but about a pattern. "You might want to see this," said Veronica Chen, the lead investigator. "We've been tracking a string of neighborhoods where fake HOAs have popped up, all using similar language, templates, enforcement tactics, many involving the same family names." She sent me a PDF. It hit like a brick. 10 neighborhood, 5 counties, similar stories, fake newsletters, bogus fines, targeted harassment, and in the center of most of them, either Karen Dorsey or a relative niece's cousins, even a so-called compliance consultant linked to a regional housing speculator. Turns out, Karen wasn't a lone wolf. She was a node in a scheme, a sprawling network of property vultures who preyed on transitional neighborhoods, gentrifying areas, communities with language barriers or aging populations. They weren't just about control, they were about displacement, and Fairwinds had been their pilot program. I pulled together our new oversight committee. Mrs. Santiago came. So did Jamal and Alina Nguyen. Even Greg, the soft-spoken librarian whose mailbox had once been smashed for violating HOA mailbox height standards. All of them had scars. But now, they had a voice. We're going public, I said. Not just about Karen, about all of it. We launched the Fairwinds Against Fraud campaign. Flyers in 5 languages, a hotline, an online portal to upload HOA documents for verification. Within days, we got over 70 inquiries. Some led to refunds. Others opened new investigations. I worked nights cross-referencing VIN records and vehicle complaints Karen had submitted. Over 60% were against non-white residents. That wasn't random. That was targeted. Then came the knock on my door. A man in his early 50s. Crisp shirt, nervous hands. "My name's David Cross," he said. "I used to live in a subdivision near Dayton. 3 years ago. We lost our home. The HOA there. They kept hitting us with fees, unannounced inspections, threats of liens. We didn't know what to do." He paused, swallowed. "I saw your town hall speech online. I recognized Karen. She was on our compliance board. Same language, same threats. They said we had to sell or face court." He handed me a folder. Inside, notices that looked like the ones I'd received, down to the font, and a business card. J. Dorsey and Asak. Property Solutions. Clean streets. Better homes. Karen's cousin. This wasn't just HOA cosplay. This was a pipeline. Harass, falsify, seize, flip. And it had worked. In Dayton, in Asheville, in San Pedro. It just didn't work here. Not with me on the block. The city teamed up with the state's attorney general's office. A multi-agency task force was launched. Karen's bail was revoked pending federal inquiry. Her brother flipped to cooperate. The entire Dorsey network began to crumble. But the most important thing, people finally started talking. At barbershops, at church, at town meetings. Neighbors who'd never spoken were sharing stories, matching names, connecting threads. The fear lifted, and in its place came something stronger: solidarity. One afternoon, as I was walking Mom to her garden bench, she said something I'll never forget. "You didn't just stop her, Germaine," she said softly. "You changed how this place sees itself. And you reminded them who built it." That hit deep, because we weren't just reclaiming peace. We were reclaiming truth. 3 months after the night Karen tried to have me arrested over my own cruiser, she stood in an orange jumpsuit before a federal judge. The courtroom buzzed. The public gallery was full, some from Fairwinds, others from the 10 neighborhoods affected by the Dorsey scheme. Reporters scribbled notes. And beside the judge, a projector showed exhibits one by one, photos of Karen taping fake citations to garage doors, surveillance video of her brother sneaking onto lawns with a measuring stick, maps showing clusters of targeted homes overwhelmingly Black, Latino, and elderly, screenshots of her fake HOA website, registered under her cousin's shell company. Karen tried to speak in her defense. "They asked for structure," she said. "They begged me to bring order to the neighborhood, and the judge cut her off. What you brought was fear." Her sentence, 5 years. Fraud, harassment, obstruction, and pending civil suits from 6 homeowners she nearly bankrupted. Her brother pled out for 3 years in restitution. The cousin in Asheville still awaiting trial. But here's the twist: none of them saw it coming, because the same communities they once divided had united. In Fairwinds, we kept going. The Fairwinds Against Fraud Task Force became a county-wide initiative. We held our first annual Community Awareness Day, where city departments taught residents how to verify real citations, how to check for legal HOA status, and how to protect their homes from predatory tactics. Jamal and Alina Nguyen hosted a cultural fair in the park with free food and live music. The Santiagos planted a rose garden in front of the community center and named it the Garden of Justice. And as for me, I stayed. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because after the storm, there's rebuilding and healing, and watching neighbors who once hid behind curtains now wave across driveways and walk side by side at neighborhood walks. One quiet Sunday, a boy about 12 biked up to me as I was raking leaves. He looked nervous, then pointed at my city car. "Is it true?" he asked. "That lady tried to get you arrested because she didn't know who you were." I smiled. "Yep." He blinked. "But you're the chief," I nodded. "I am." He grinned wide. "Good," and rode off. That's what it all came down to. Not titles, not uniforms, but knowing someone's finally watching, that someone has your back, that silence can be broken, and justice, however slow, still walks its way home. This story isn't just about one neighborhood or one Karen. It's about what happens when false authority preys on fear, when community is bullied into silence, and when no one's checking who's behind the clipboard. So let's talk. Have you ever seen an HOA or someone pretending to be one abuse their power? Have you seen people targeted because of how they look, where they're from, or what they drive? What does real accountability look like to you? Share your story. Speak up. Justice starts when someone dares to say, "This isn't right." Let that someone be you.